Hi, everybody. I'm Sharna Langlais, and I am here to share with you all this week's energetic wrap up. So, as I work with clients, I often find over the course of a week that many people are going through similar themes and similar issues. And so, I wanted to talk about sort of this week in review in terms of energy and talk through some of the themes that I've been seeing and also some of the recommendations for how we might work with these themes. So, the first theme that I've been seeing a lot of, not just this week, but overall, is this feeling of jumping timelines where people feel like maybe they go to sleep in one reality and they wake up in something entirely different. Or there's that sort of time warpy feeling where you're moving through your day and sometimes everything speeds up really fast and then everything slows way down. And this is a byproduct of the ascension process. As we increase and elevate our vibration and frequency, not just individually, but collectively, we experience 3D very differently. So the third dimension is very caught up in linear time, but the higher dimensional realities are less attached to time and timelines. For those of us, I'm one of these people who really connect with time, this can be somewhat disconcerting if we are used to linear time sort of moving in a certain direction, and then we find ourselves having to play back and forth with different timelines or realities. Some of my clients I've seen are talking about feeling like they're not even really necessarily living the same life or as present to their life as they once were. This can also be disconcerting again for people who tend to be a little bit more concrete in their way of existing and living. My predominant recommendation around this is probably not going to be surprising to folks, which is to surrender, right? The more that we move into still point, we move into that neutral state, the easier it becomes for us to be able to move across timelines without feeling quite so nervous and worried. The harder that we clutch, and I am a big person that likes to do this, I love to hang on to linear time. But the longer and the more that we clutch or hold on, the more difficult that becomes for us to allow things to shift and move in the ways that we need to. So surrender, still point, neutral, whatever that terminology is for you would be my first recommendation. My second recommendation that goes along with that is non-attachment. A lot of times this becomes uncomfortable to us because we're attached to a particular outcome. We want things to be going a certain way, or maybe we really liked one timeline that we were in, and suddenly we find that we're in another timeline that may be a little less appealing to us. Trusting that that is all kind of working its way out. A lot of times, what I will suggest in this too is to say to the universe, say to your spirit guides, say to yourself, hey, this is the frequency I like. Thank you, universe. More of this, please, is something I say a lot. That then allows us to kind of anchor into the universe. Hey, this is the direction I'd like to keep going in. And then we can, in the timelines that maybe don't feel as comfortable, we can say things like, ooh, this is not my preference, or no, thank you. And then the last recommendation I'll make with this is to try to keep your vibration as high as possible. This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't spiritual bypassing. I'm talking about truly keeping your vibration in a place where you are connected as much as possible to joy, to happiness, to excitement. This is a lot easier for us to do when we are unattached. One of my best pathways through to this, if I'm really struggling, is to work with gratitude. Gratitude is the swiftest pathway that gets us back to a loving energy and a loving frequency. So when we can find what we are grateful for and keep our vibration in as high of a space as is possible for us, right? We still want to look at the things that are upsetting or bothering us, but we want to kind of do it from this neutral, unattached, as high a frequency as place as possible, because we know right now we are in extremely chaotic times. Chaos is the energy of change. I say it a lot to my students, and I try to remind myself of this a lot, that when we can be with the chaos and we can see it as an opportunity for celebration, it means that something's trying to shift. We can allow ourselves to kind of be and move with that chaos energy. This is a second theme that I'm seeing a lot with my clients this last week, is the pendulum swinging really wide. So there's this sense that, starting and stopping points are very far apart from each other. We're in what we would call hyperpolarity, right? The contrast is very big right now. So the highs are really high, the lows are really low. For those of us that have a fair amount of trauma, this can be really upsetting. Volatility, polarization, those kinds of things taught us we were in unsafe environments. So a lot of times when that pendulum starts to swing, we move into hypervigilance, our nervous system starts to dysregulate, we get really freaked out. And then there's the opportunity to go again back into that surrender mode and witness perhaps why the pendulum is swinging quite so wide. One of the things I'm noticing with this is that we are moving through deep soul level growth. And when that occurs, that means we are going to be exploring extremes of both sides of a dynamic. When we move and exit things out, when we're finally hitting that point of like, oh my gosh, I'm done with this. I don't want to be in this energy anymore. I don't want to do this lesson again. We often have to revisit all of the ends of that pendulum. So again, when we can move into a place of perhaps celebrating that this is an exciting thing, it means that we're moving through the final degrees or final phases of energies or themes or patterns, we can celebrate it a little bit more. My other suggestion when the pendulum swings in this way is to slow down. Chaos only gets increased when we are moving really quickly. So if you start to notice those highs are really high, those lows are really low, or perhaps your emotional experience is just sort of all over the map, this is not a moment to go into hyperdrive. It's not a moment to add new projects to your plate. This is a moment to sit back, take a look, witness what's happening, try to be in that witness observer mode and regulate, right? Most of the time, almost always, our nervous system does not regulate in speed. It's the opposite. We regulate by moving more into feminine energies of being and stillness. The last theme that I have been seeing a lot of this week has to do with connecting into our shadow self and our shadow parts. Because of that polarity that we're experiencing, shadow sides are coming up and they are big and bright and ready for us to take a look at. I am actually going to be doing a Reiki energy healing this coming week, working on exploring healing with the shadow sides. So look for that on my YouTube channel this coming week. But for the time being, one of the best recommendations I can make about working with the shadow self is to start to see the shadow as an ally. Most of the time when something negative comes in, we see a shadow part of ourselves. We don't want to see it. We don't want to look at it, or we're pushing it away. We're judging it. We're angry at it. Like, why are you here? I don't like this side of myself. And yet we know that there is medicine in darkness, right? We cannot have the light, at least in 3D, without the shadow, right? Those two contrasting pieces come together, and our shadow part exists for a reason. For almost all of us, our shadow has kept us safe in certain times, especially when we were younger. Shadow parts have allowed us to be strong in situations where perhaps we didn't think that we could be strong enough. Sometimes shadow parts have allowed us to run away and hide. When we haven't found safety. So I always try to see what is my shadow part, what particular type of shadow, because many of us have multiple different shadow arenas or shadow parts that we work with. Where is the medicine in this? What has the shadow part been trying to do for me? How has the shadow been trying to operate for my highest and best good? And how can I become friends with my shadow part? One of the analogies I make with the shadow is working with a feral animal. When a feral animal comes into your space, if you get real aggressive with it and you're in its face, it's going to attack you, right? But when we can be with that feral animal, when we can allow ourselves to just sit and witness it, everybody starts to calm down. We can start to see the gifts in that animal. And over time, we may even be able to transmute the job or the function that that shadow part has played. Some of you have heard me talk about in the past, one of my shadow parts has actually become my healer. So when I was really repressing a lot of my healing gifts and wasn't living and that part of my purpose, I became internally very destructive to myself. And then over the years, as I started to realize that this was a part of myself that wanted expression in these kind of darker, esoteric ways, it allowed me to use it in a function that is for good. And truthfully, if I didn't have some really dark shadow parts, it would be hard for me to do my work as a healer because I wouldn't have a sense of understanding what it feels like to be in those energies. So that's everything for this week's week in review. If this is something you enjoyed, I'd love to get your feedback in the comments. And if there's a particular part of something that I talked about that particularly resonates for you, I'd love to read that in the comments as well. Also, if you are looking for some support with cord clearing, with releasing some of these more difficult energies, I have a Reiki healing transmission on cord clearing that was posted last week that I'll make a link in the description, and hope you go ahead and watch that if that feels good to you. Otherwise, sending you all so much love and brightest blessings.